Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. We unpack complex topics, give you the surprising facts, and, well, just enough context to keep you hooked. Today, we're diving into one of the most harrowing periods in modern history. It's a story that starts with a really killing scene back in the spring of 1945. Germany is crumbling. The war is almost lost. Just imagine this. An 11-year-old German boy, his name's Helmuth. He's lying in bed, terrified, listening to his parents talk. His father, a respected doctor and a devout Nazi supporter, is talking about suicide. Helmuth overhears him whispering his deepest fear, saying, "Now the Allies will do to us what we did to the crippled and Jews." The very next day, his father takes him out to the woods. They have this final poignant moment together singing old children's songs. Then his father goes home and takes his own life. Helmuth never forgot seeing his father's bloody uniform being burned right there in the family fireplace. The trauma ran so deep that for the next 9 years, believe it or not, he refused to eat anything prepared at home. He was terrified his own mother might poison him. Now, this isn't just a personal tragedy, though it certainly is that. It's really a window into a dark chapter of history. Our mission today is to deeply understand the system of ideas and politics known as Nazism. We'll explore its terrifying rise, how it managed to grip an entire nation, and, well, why a man like Helmuth's father was driven to such a desperate act. We're here to give you the full historical context, the horrifying consequences, and make sure you grasp the really profound lessons this period holds.
That's absolutely right. And our goal in this deep dive is to provide you with a, let's say, structured and comprehensive understanding of Nazism and Adolf Hitler's rise to power. This knowledge is just crucial for anyone wanting to grasp this pivotal moment in history. It offers insights that will really solidify your understanding, for any academic challenge or competitive examination you might be facing. Will aim to bring absolute clarity to the key events, the underlying ideologies, and their really far-reaching impact.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our journey kicks off with the aftermath of the First World War and the, well, surprising birth of the Weimar Republic. Germany officially surrendered to the Allies in May 1945, right? That marked the end of World War II in Europe. But even before that, knowing defeat was coming, Hitler himself, along with his propaganda minister Goebbels and their families, they chose a horrific path: collective suicide in his Berlin bunker, April 45.
Indeed. And the defeat of Nazi Germany, it wasn't just a military victory. It was the moment the world truly started to grasp the scale of the atrocities. Unimaginable, really. This led pretty quickly to the establishment of the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. Its specific task: prosecuting the top Nazi war criminals. They faced charges that were, frankly, unprecedented at the time: crimes against peace, war crimes, and crucially, this new category, crimes against humanity. Germany's actions, especially those under crimes against humanity, raised these profound moral and ethical questions. There was condemnation right across the globe.
And what exactly did crimes against humanity cover in this context?
Well, under the shadow of the Second World War, Germany had waged what can only be described as a genocidal war. This wasn't just, unfortunate collateral damage. It was the systematic, planned mass murder of specific, targeted groups of innocent civilians right across Europe. The numbers involved, they're staggering, truly difficult to comprehend even today. We're talking 6 million Jews, about 200,000 Roma, often called gypsies, 1 million Polish civilians, 70,000 Germans considered mentally and physically disabled, the very people Helmuth's father mentioned, plus countless political opponents. And the Nazis didn't just kill, they industrialized murder, gassing victims in these vast killing centers, with Auschwitz becoming the chilling symbol of it all.
Industrialized murder, horrifying. But you mentioned the punishment at Nuremberg.
Yes. Despite the horrifying scale and the systematic nature of these crimes, the Nuremberg Tribunal actually sentenced only 11 leading Nazis to death. Many others received life imprisonment. While they did pursue accountability, many felt the retribution was, well, far short of the sheer brutality and the immense scope of the crimes committed. It's also really vital to understand the Allies' approach after World War II. They consciously chose not to be as harsh on defeated Germany as they had been after the First World War. And this implicitly acknowledged a crucial link, that the really punitive measures after the first global conflict might have maybe inadvertently helped create the fertile ground for Nazism to rise in the first place.
That's a really profound point, that the harsh treatment before might have sown the seeds for this new horror. So what was that earlier experience, the one after World War I, that set the stage for such extreme outcomes? How did it lead to Nazism and these atrocities?
Right, to really get a handle on that, we need to rewind to the First World War, which raged from 1914 to 1918. Germany, back then a powerful empire, fought alongside the Austrian Empire against the Allies, initially England, France, and Russia. Later, the USA joined in 1917. Initially, all sides were swept up in this wave of nationalism, everyone expecting a quick victory. But that illusion just shattered. The war dragged on for 4 brutal years, draining Europe of nearly all its human and material resources. Germany did make some early gains, occupying parts of France and Belgium, but the tide turned decisively when the Allies were bolstered by the U.S. entry. By November 1918, Germany and the Central Powers were defeated.
Okay, defeat. So what happened then, politically?
Well, this defeat of Imperial Germany, plus the emperor abdicating, it created this unprecedented opening. Parliamentary parties saw a chance to fundamentally change the German political system. A national assembly met in Weimar. They drafted and established a democratic constitution, a federal structure. For the first time, deputies were elected to the German parliament, the Reichstag, based on equal and universal votes from all adults, including women, which was quite progressive for the time.
A democratic republic, including women's suffrage, sounds like a positive step.
It should have been. But this new republic, the Weimar Republic, faced immediate resentment from its own people.
Why? Why resent democracy?
Because it was forced to accept the incredibly harsh terms of the peace treaty signed after Germany's defeat, the Treaty of Versailles. For many Germans, this treaty felt like a profound betrayal, a deep humiliation. Under Versailles, Germany lost its overseas colonies, a tenth of its population, 13% of its territories, a staggering 75% of its iron, 26% of its coal, all going to countries like France, Poland, Denmark, Lithuania. On top of that, the Allied powers deliberately demilitarized Germany, drastically limiting its military. And then there was the infamous War Guild Clause. It explicitly blamed Germany alone for the war and all the damages, forcing them to pay enormous reparations, a staggering £6 billion.
Yeah.
And, to add insult to injury, Allied armies occupied the resource-rich Rhineland for much of the 1920s. So consequently, many Germans blamed the new Weimar Republic, not just for the defeat, but more pointedly, for what they saw as the utter disgrace of Versailles. This deep resentment became, well, toxic.
Wow, so the very foundation was shaky, built on humiliation and blame.
It's exactly. The war's impact on Europe was devastating, both financially and psychologically. Europe, once a continent of creditors, was now burdened by immense war debts, transformed into debtors. And tragically, the infant Weimar Republic was made to carry the burden, pay for the sins of the old empire. It bore the weight of war guilt, national humiliation, and was financially crippled by reparations. And the people who supported the Weimar Republic, mostly socialists, Catholics, Democrats, they became easy targets for conservative nationalist groups. These groups mockingly called them the November criminals, implying they betrayed the nation by signing the armistice and accepting Versailles. This narrative poisoned the political climate right into the early 1930s, creating fertile ground for extremism.
And how did the war itself change society?
Profoundly. Soldiers were suddenly glorified above civilians. Politicians relentlessly pushed these aggressive, strong, masculine ideals. The media often romanticized trench life, ignoring the grim reality soldiers living with rats, corpses, poison gas, constant shelling. It was horrific. Aggressive war propaganda, this obsessive focus on national honor, became central. And in that charged atmosphere, support for conservative dictatorships, which were popping up across Europe, grew steadily. Democracy, you see, in this interwar period was a young, fragile idea, and it tragically struggled to survive the profound instabilities gripping the continent.
It really sounds like a pressure cooker. You mentioned extremism. In that environment, someone always steps forward offering solutions. How did the internal political landscape respond? What about political radicalism, like the Spartacist uprising?
You're absolutely right. It was a pressure picker. The birth of the Weimar Republic coincided with this period of intense political radicalism. Immediately after the war, you had the Spartacist League. They were explicitly trying to copy the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, and they started a revolutionary uprising. Soviets, councils of workers and sailors, just like in Russia, were set up in many German cities. Berlin's political atmosphere was particularly charged, demanding Soviet-style governance.
So how did the new republic handle that?
Well, the Weimar Republic, still finding its feet, moved decisively to crush the Spartacist uprising. It did this with the help of the Free Corps. These were powerful, fiercely anti-communist paramilitary groups, mostly disgruntled war veterans. This brutal suppression had a really profound, lasting consequence. The Spartacists, defeated and anguished, went on to found the Communist Party of Germany. And from that point on, communists and socialists became irreconcilable enemies. This deep hatred prevented them from ever forming a united front against the rising threat of Hitler and the Nazis later on. So you had both revolutionary leftists and militant nationalists completely opposed in their goals, but both craving radical solutions.
And this was happening alongside economic turmoil.
Exactly. This political radicalization was only fueled further by a severe economic crisis in 1923, hyperinflation. See, Germany had funded World War I largely through massive loans. After the war, they faced a crushing burden of reparations which had to be paid in gold. This rapidly depleted Germany's reserves. In 1923, when Germany couldn't make its payments, France retaliated by occupying the Ruhr, Germany's main industrial area, to seize its coal. Germany's response: passive resistance and, crucially, recklessly printing vast amounts of paper money to pay its workers. With way too much money flooding the economy, the value of the German mark just plummeted. Can you imagine the value dropping from thousands to literally trillions against the US dollar in just months? People were seen carrying wheelbarrows full of cash just to buy a loaf of bread. This catastrophic situation, prices soaring, currency worthless, became known as hyperinflation. Eventually, the Americans stepped in with the Dawes Plan, which reworked the reparation terms, offering a brief bit of breathing room.
Okay, a brief reprieve with the Dawes Plan, but you described the earlier stability as being built on sand. What happened next? How did this fragility play out?
Indeed. The years between 1924 and 1928, sometimes called the Golden Twenties, saw a brief period of relative stability. But you're absolutely right, it was fundamentally built on sand. Germany's entire recovery depended almost entirely on short-term loans, mostly from the USA. And this precarious support was just abruptly pulled out from under them when the Wall Street Exchange crashed in 1929. The crash triggered widespread panic. Fearing prices would plummet, people frantically tried to sell their shares. On one single day, October 24th, an incredible 13 million shares were sold. This marked the dramatic start of the Great Economic Depression, a global downturn with profound effects everywhere. Between 1929 and 1932, the U.S. national income halved. Factories shut down, exports fell, farmers were devastated, speculators pulled their money out. The effects were global, but the German economy was, by far, the worst hit.
How bad did it get in Germany?
Devastating. By 1932, Germany's industrial production had crashed to just 40% of its 1929 level for ordinary Germans. Dire consequences. Workers lost jobs en masse or faced drastically reduced wages. Unemployment skyrocketed, hitting an unprecedented 6 million. On the streets, you'd commonly see men with signs saying willing to do any work. Young people, despairing, sat at street corners or queued hopelessly at employment exchanges. Many turned to petty crime. A deep despair just pervaded society. This crisis generated widespread fear. The middle classes, especially employees and pensioners, saw their savings evaporate as the currency lost value again, stirring bitter memories of 1923. Small businesses, the self-employed, retailers faced ruin, bankruptcy. They were gripped by this fear of proletarianization, anxiety about being reduced to working class or worse, unemployed. Only organized workers, the lucky few with jobs, could barely manage, but even their bargaining power was weakened by mass unemployment. Big businesses were in crisis. Farmers suffered from falling prices. And perhaps most poignantly, women, struggling to feed their children, were filled with this profound sense of despair.
And the political system couldn't cope.
No, politically too, the Weimar Republic was inherently fragile. Its constitution had several flaws that made it unstable and susceptible to authoritarianism. One major flaw was proportional representation. Sounds fair, but it made it almost impossible for any single party to get a majority, leading consistently to weak, unstable coalition governments. Another critical flaw was Article 48. This controversially gave the president huge powers to impose emergencies, suspend civil rights, and rule by decree, basically bypassing parliament. In its short life, the Weimar Republic saw 20 different cabinets, lasting on average just 239 days each. This constant change was accompanied by a liberal, even excessive use of Article 48. Yet despite these attempts, the crisis persisted. People rapidly lost confidence in the democratic system, which seemed incapable of offering any real solutions.
That sense of national humiliation, the desperation, it certainly sounds like fertile ground for someone like Hitler. But how did he actually seize power? Beyond just public appeal, were there specific moments or weaknesses he exploited?
You've hit on a critical question. This profound crisis, economic, political, social, formed the perfect tragic backdrop for Adolf Hitler's meteoric rise. He was born in Austria in 1889, spent his youth in relative poverty. When World War I broke out, he eagerly volunteered, served as a messenger, earned medals for bravery. But Germany's defeat horrified him, and the Versailles Treaty, which he saw as a national humiliation, filled him with furious indignation. In 1919, deeply bitter, he joined a small group called the German Workers' Party. He showed this, innate talent for organization and powerful speaking. He quickly took over, transformed it, renamed it the National Socialist German Workers' Party, soon known everywhere as the Nazi Party. In 1923, he made an early failed attempt to seize power in a coup, planning to march from Bavaria to Berlin. He failed, got arrested, tried for treason, but was later released. Despite this ambition, the Nazis initially struggled. They remained a fringe movement until the early 1930s.
So what changed? How did they become a mass movement?
It was precisely the Great Depression, after 1929. That's when Nazism truly took off. As we discussed, banks collapsed, businesses shut, millions lost jobs, the middle class faced destitution. In that desperate situation, Nazi propaganda cunningly stirred hopes of a better future. The electoral results show it dramatically. In 1928, the Nazis got a mere 2.6% of the vote. But by 1932, fueled by despair and promises of radical solutions, they became the largest party, with a substantial 37%.
And Hitler himself, what was his appeal?
Hitler was a powerful, mesmerizing speaker. His passion, his forceful delivery, it deeply moved people, resonated with their anxieties and desires. He made grand promises that hit right at the nation's grievances. Build a strong nation, undo the injustice of Versailles, restore German dignity. For the jobless, he promised employment. For the youth, a secure future. He pledged to root out foreign influences, resist foreign conspiracies against Germany. Crucially, he devised a completely new, highly effective style of politics. He instinctively understood the power of rituals and spectacle in mass mobilization. The Nazis held massive rallies, meticulously organized public meetings. These weren't just to show support, but to instill this powerful, almost religious sense of unity. The visuals were carefully crafted. The red banners with the swastika, the Nazi salute, the ritualized, thunderous applause after his speeches, all part of this spectacle of power. Nazi propaganda skillfully projected Hitler as a messiah, a savior figure, someone who'd arrived to deliver the people from their distress. This image captured the imagination of a population whose dignity and pride were shattered, living through acute economic and political crises.
With such overwhelming momentum, it seems Hitler was poised for absolute power. How then did he translate this into total control and systematically dismantle the democratic structures, fragile as they were? It sounds like a playbook for authoritarianism.
It absolutely was, a chillingly calculated one. On January 30, 1933, a truly pivotal moment, President Hindenburg offered Hitler the chancellorship, the highest cabinet position. By then, the Nazis had strategically rallied significant conservative support. Having got this crucial position, Hitler immediately set out to dismantle democratic rule. A mysterious fire in the German parliament building, the Reichstag, on February 28, 1933, gave him the perfect pretext. Using this, the fire decree was issued. It indefinitely suspended fundamental civic rights, freedom of speech, press, assembly rights guaranteed by the Weimar Constitution. Opposition silenced. He then swiftly turned on his archenemies, the communists. Most were rounded up, hurried off to newly established concentration camps, detained without any due process. The repression of communists was severe, but it's vital to remember they were just one of 52 types of victims persecuted by the Nazis.
And then came the Enabling Act.
Yes, on March 3, 1933. This act was the legal cornerstone of the dictatorship. It effectively gave Hitler all powers to sideline parliament and rule solely by decree. Democracy bypassed completely. All political parties, trade unions, pillars of democracy were banned. The only exception was the Nazi Party and its affiliates. The Nazi state rapidly established complete, absolute control over everything: the economy, media, army, judiciary.
And how did they enforce this control?
Through a comprehensive network of special surveillance and security forces. Besides the regular police in green uniforms and the SA, the stormtroopers, his original paramilitary force, you had new terrifying forces. The Gestapo, the secret state political police, known for brutality and surveillance, the SS protection squads, evolving into an elite ideological unit, even a military branch, the criminal police, and the security service, the SD, their intelligence agency. It was the extra-constitutional powers of these forces that gave the Nazi state its chilling reputation as the most dreaded criminal state. Ordinary citizens could be detained in Gestapo torture chambers, sent to concentration camps, often surrounded by electrified barbed wire, deported at will, arrested without legal procedures. These police forces acquired powers to rule with absolute impunity, creating a pervasive climate of fear.
Once in power with such complete domestic control, how did Hitler try to rebuild the economy and assert Germany internationally? What was the next move, knowing the world was watching?
Right after consolidating power, Hitler immediately focused on economic recovery. He assigned this task to a well-known economist, Hjalmar Schacht. Schacht aimed for full production and full employment through an ambitious state-funded work creation program. This produced some visible successes, like the famous German superhighways, the Autobahns, and the people's car, the Volkswagen, designed to be affordable.
And on the foreign policy front,
He achieved a string of surprisingly quick successes there, too, which significantly boosted his prestige. In 1933, he boldly pulled Germany out of the League of Nations, showing his disregard for international cooperation. Then, 1936, he reoccupied the Rhineland, a demilitarized zone under Versailles, without facing any real resistance. 1938, he integrated Austria and Germany, the Anschluss, under the powerful slogan, "One people, one empire, one leader." He then took the German-speaking Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia and soon after just gobbled up the rest of the country. And in all of this, he had the, well, unspoken support of England, which maybe ironically thought the Versailles verdict had been too harsh. These rapid successes, home and abroad, created this powerful illusion that Hitler was reversing Germany's destiny, restoring its glory.
But it didn't stop there, did it?
Far from it. Schacht, the economist, had actually advised Hitler against huge rearmament spending, warning about deficit financing. But cautious people weren't welcome. Schacht had to leave. Hitler, ignoring economic prudence, chose war as his strategic way out of the looming economic crisis. His twisted logic: resources were to be gained through aggressive expansion. This led directly to the invasion of Poland in September 1939. That act finally triggered war with France and England, the start of World War II. In September 1940, a crucial alliance, the Tripartite Pact, was signed between Germany, Italy, and Japan, strengthening Hitler's claim to international power. Puppet regimes loyal to the Nazis were installed across much of Europe. By the end of 1940, Hitler seemed invincible, at the absolute pinnacle of his power.
And then came the invasion of the Soviet Union.
Yes, his ambitions were limitless. Hitler now moved to achieve his long-term aim: conquering Eastern Europe. He wanted vital food supplies and living space, or Lebensraum, for Germans. This led him to attack the Soviet Union in June 1941, what turned out to be a historic blunder. This massive offensive had two immediate devastating consequences. It exposed the German Western Front to relentless British bombing and simultaneously opened the Eastern Front to the immense, powerful Soviet armies. The Soviet Red Army inflicted a crushing, humiliating defeat on Germany at Stalingrad. That was a major turning point. After Stalingrad, the Red Army relentlessly pushed the retreating Germans all the way back to Berlin. This victory ultimately led to Soviet dominance over Eastern Europe for half a century.
And the U.S. entry into the war.
Right, the U.S. had initially resisted involvement, mainly due to the economic problems caused by World War I, but they couldn't stay neutral forever. Japan, Germany's ally, was expanding rapidly in the east, occupied French Indochina, planning attacks on U.S. naval bases. When Japan, supporting Hitler, bombed the crucial U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the United States finally entered World War II. The war, a global cataclysm, finally ended in May 1945, with Hitler's defeat in Europe, followed by the tragic U.S. atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan, ending the conflict in the Pacific.
That's a comprehensive overview of the military and political machine. But beyond conquests and maneuvers, Nazism was fundamentally built on a deeply disturbing worldview. What were its core tenets? The ideology driving these crimes and the fear that gripped Helmuth's father.
You've truly hit the core of it. Nazi ideology was basically synonymous with Hitler's worldview, a belief system underpinning every single action. The central idea: a complete rejection of equality, instead a rigid racial hierarchy. At the absolute top, the blonde, blue-eyed Nordic German Aryans, the purest, most superior race they believed. At the very bottom, the Jews, not just inferior, but demonized as an anti-race, the arch-enemies of the Aryans. All other colored people were slotted somewhere in between, ranked by external features and perceived racial purity.
Where did these ideas come from?
Disturbingly, Hitler's racism borrowed from, and grotesquely twisted, the ideas of thinkers like Charles Darwin and Herbert Spencer. Darwin, a natural scientist, proposed evolution and natural selection. Spencer later added the idea of survival of the fittest. I know. Now, it's absolutely crucial to clarify. Darwin never advocated human intervention in natural selection. His ideas were scientific. But racist thinkers and politicians, including the Nazis, deliberately misappropriated and distorted these ideas to justify brutal imperial rule. The Nazi argument? Simple and brutal. The strongest race, Aryan, would survive, the weak perish. So the Aryan race had a duty to retain its purity, get stronger, and dominate the world.
And the concept of Lebensraum.
Yes, the other fundamental aspect was this geopolitical concept, Lebensraum, literally living space. Hitler passionately believed new territories had to be acquired for German settlement. The purpose: enhance the mother country's area, allow settlers to keep links to their origin, and crucially enhance Germany's material resources and power. His vision was specifically to expand eastwards, to concentrate all Germans geographically. Poland tragically became the primary laboratory for this brutal experiment.
So how did they implement this racial state, eliminating undesirables?
Once in power, they swiftly began implementing their dream, an exclusive racial community of pure Germans, their horrifying method. Physical elimination of all deemed undesirable. Only pure and healthy Nordic Aryans were considered desirable, worthy of prospering. All others were undesirable, meaning even Germans seen as impure or abnormal had no right to exist. This connects directly to Helmut's father's fears. Under the chilling euthanasia program, Nazi officials, including Helmut's father, had condemned many Germans considered mentally or physically unfit to death.
And it wasn't just Jews classified as undesirable.
No, absolutely not. There were many others. Roma and black people living in Nazi Germany were tragically considered racial inferiors, seen as threatening Aryan biological purity, widely persecuted. Even Russians and Poles were deemed subhuman, undeserving of humanity in the Nazi view. When Germany occupied Poland and parts of Russia, captured civilians were brutally forced into slave labor. Many died simply from hard work and starvation.
But Jews remained the primary target.
Yes, Jews undoubtedly remained the worst sufferers. Nazi hatred of Jews had historical roots in traditional Christian hostility. Jews often stereotyped as killers of Christ and usurers. Historically, Jews were often barred from owning land, survived by trade money lending, lived in ghettos, suffered periodic violence and expulsion. But Hitler's hatred went beyond tradition. It was based on these pseudoscientific race theories. These theories held that conversion was no solution. For Hitler, the problem could only be solved through their total elimination.
How did this persecution unfold? You mentioned stages.
Yes. It was a horrifying, systematic progression in distinct stages. Stage 1, exclusion, 1933-1939. The message was basically, you have no right to live among us as citizens. This saw the infamous Nuremberg Laws of Citizenship in September 1935. These laws stated only persons of German or related blood were citizens. What's chilling isn't just the restrictions, but how they legally formalized dehumanization. Marriages between Jews and Germans forbidden. Extramarital relations criminalized. Jews forbidden to fly the national flag. Other measures included boycotting Jewish businesses, expulsion from government jobs, forced selling and confiscation of property. This stage culminated in Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass in November 1938. A brutal pogrom. Properties vandalized, looted, houses attacked, synagogues burnt, men arrested en masse. The outcome, Jews were terrorized, impoverished, segregated, pressured to leave the country.
And the next stage, ghettoization.
Stage 2, ghettoization, 1940-1944. The message shifted. You have no right to live among us. From September 1941, all Jews had to wear a yellow Star of David prominently on their clothes, passports, documents, even their houses, instantly identifiable. They were confined to Jewish houses in Germany and more extensively into densely packed ghettos in the east, like Lodz and Warsaw. These ghettos quickly became places of extreme misery, unbelievable poverty. Jews had to surrender all wealth before entering. Soon they were filled with hunger, starvation, rampant disease due to deprivation, and appalling hygiene.
Leading inevitably to the final stage.
Stage 3, annihilation, 1941 onwards, the ultimate message, you have no right to live. During this phase, Jews from houses, concentration camps, ghettos across Europe were rounded up, transported to death factories by goods trains. These killing centers were mainly in Poland and elsewhere in the east, Belzec, Auschwitz, Sobibor, Treblinka, Chelmno, Majdanek. The method was industrial-scale gassing. Mass killings carried out within minutes with terrifying scientific precision. The gas chambers themselves were chillingly labeled disinfection areas, deliberately designed to look like bathrooms, fake shower heads, and all to deceive victims until the very last moments. Horrifying.
The scale is just unbelievable. Beyond this direct persecution, how did the regime try to mold future generations? Control education, social norms, especially for youth and women. It seems they wanted minds as much as bodies.
Exactly. Hitler was fanatically interested in the youth. He believed a strong Nazi society could only be built by indoctrinating children from a very young age. This meant absolute control, inside and outside school. Schools underwent cleansing and purification. Teachers who were Jews or politically unreliable were dismissed. Children were segregated. German and Jewish kids couldn't sit or play together. Then, undesirable children Jews, the physically handicapped Roma, were thrown out of schools. Tragically, by the 1940s, many were taken to the gas chambers.
So what kind of education did the good German children receive?
It was prolonged, intensive Nazi schooling, basically ideological training. Textbooks were rewritten. Racial science was introduced to justify Nazi race ideas. Stereotypes about Jews were relentlessly pushed, even in math classes. Children were taught things like, a Jewish nose looks like the number 6. They were taught blind loyalty, submission, hatred of Jews, and worship of Hitler. Even sports were perverted, designed to nurture violence and aggression.
Hitler believed boxing made children iron-hearted, strong, masculine.
And outside school,
Yeah.
youth organizations.
Yes, they were entirely responsible for educating youth in the spirit of National Socialism. 10-year-olds entered the Young Volk, the junior group. At 14, all boys had to join the Hitler Youth. There, they learned to worship war, glorify aggression, condemn democracy, hate Jews, communists, Roma, all undesirables. After rigorous ideological and physical training around age 18, they joined the labor service, then the armed forces or other Nazi groups. A pipeline of loyal followers. To ensure total control, the Nazi Youth League systematically dissolved and banned all other independent youth organizations. The head of the German Labor Front, Robert Ley, chillingly summarized it. "We start when the child is 3. We don't let go until they go to the grave, whether they like it or not." Boys went through preliminary training, ending with a solemn oath. "I swear to devote all my energies to the savior of our country, Adolf Hitler. I am willing to give up my life for him, so help me God."
Chilling. And what about women, the cult of motherhood?
The regime radically redefined women's roles. Children were told women were fundamentally different from men. The fight for equal rights. Wrong. Destructive to society, they said. Boys. Aggressive, masculine, steel-hearted. Girls. Their role was to be good mothers, rear pure-blooded Aryan children, maintain race purity, look after the home, teach Nazi values, bearers of Aryan culture. In 1933, Hitler declared, "In my state, the mother is the most important citizen." But not all mothers were equal. Women bearing racially undesirable children were punished. Those producing desirable children were awarded favored hospital treatment, concessions in shops, theater tickets, railway fares. They even gave out honor crosses. Bronze for 4 children, silver for 6, gold for 8 or more.
And punishment for deviation.
Severe. Aryan women deviating from this code were publicly condemned. Those maintaining contact with Jews, Poles, Russians were paraded through towns, shaved heads, blackened faces, placards saying, "I have sullied the honor of the nation." Many jailed, lost civic honor, husbands, families. Hitler's philosophy, stated at a rally, "We do not consider it correct for the woman to interfere in the world of the man. What the man gives in courage on the battlefield, the woman gives in eternal self-sacrifice. Every child is a battle for the existence of her people." Women were seen as the most stable element in preserving the race, instrumental to Nazi goals.
It's clear they were masters of manipulation, controlling every aspect of life. How specifically did they use language and media to control perception, make atrocities seem acceptable? This feels like psychological warfare.
It truly was. Unparalleled in its sophistication and chilling effect, they used language with extreme care. The terms they coined were deceptive, chillingly euphemistic, never kill or murder in official communications, mass killings, called special treatment, or for Jews, the final solution, killing the disabled. Euthanasia, selection meant choosing who lived or died. Disinfections meant extermination. Evacuation chillingly meant deporting people to gas chambers. And as I mentioned, the chambers themselves were called disinfection areas, designed like bathrooms to deceive victims.
And media, how was that used?
Meticulously controlled and used to win support and popularize their twisted worldview. Ideas spread through visual images, propaganda films, radio posters, catchy slogans, leaflets, everywhere. Groups identified as enemies were systematically stereotyped, mocked, abused, described as evil. Socialists and liberals, represented as weak, degenerate, foreign agents undermining the nation, Jews. Propaganda films like The Eternal Jew created deep hatred. Orthodox Jews stereotyped with flowing beards. Caftans, even though many German Jews were highly assimilated, hard to distinguish visually. They were dehumanized, called vermin, rats, pests. Their movements compared to rodents. One notorious poster, "Money is the god of Jews. He commits the greatest crimes." This systematic psychological warfare worked on people's minds, tapped emotions, turned hatred towards undesirables. They also tried to appeal to all sections, promising solutions. Appealing to farmers against big capitalism and Bolshevism, both labeled Jewish thought. Presenting Nazism as the only rescuer. Posters appealing directly to workers too, showing concern for everyone, but purely for manipulation.
Given this pervasive propaganda, this systematic control, how did ordinary Germans react? This is such a complex question. What really happened in the streets, the homes?
It is profoundly complex, and reactions varied widely. Many Germans, swayed by propaganda, seeing apparent recovery, genuinely adopted the Nazi worldview. They spoke Nazi language, felt hatred for Jews, marked Jewish houses, reported suspicious neighbors, genuinely believed Nazism would bring prosperity. For them, it felt like hope, renewed purpose. However, not every German was a Nazi. A brave minority organized active resistance, facing severe repression, even death. Yet the large majority were, tragically, passive onlookers, apathetic witnesses, too scared to act, differ, protest openly. They preferred to look away.
Pastor Martin Niemöller, a resistance fighter, powerfully observed an absence of protest, an uncanny silence among ordinary Germans facing these brutal crimes. His famous poem captures this sequential targeting and the danger of inaction. First they came for the communists. Well, I was not a communist, so I said nothing, and so on, until then when they came for me, there was no one left who could stand up for me. A stark warning.
But some people genuinely felt things were better.
Yes, it's important to acknowledge that subjective experience. Erna Kranz, an ordinary German teenager interviewed later, recalled the 1930s offering a glimmer of hope. Salaries increased, and Germany seemed to have regained its sense of purpose. I could only say for myself, I thought it was a good time. I liked it.
This highlights the complexity individual experiences versus the regime's broader crimes.
And the Jewish experience during this time.
Profoundly different. Utterly terrifying. Charlotte Barat, who secretly recorded dreams, described how Jews tragically began believing Nazi stereotypes about themselves, dreaming of hooked noses, black hair. Stereotypical images haunted them, even in dreams. The stark reality, as one survivor put it, Jews died many deaths, even before they reached the gas chamber. The psychological torment was immense.
How did the world find out about the Holocaust? Information did trickle out during the last years of the regime. But it was only after the war, after Germany's defeat, that the world truly grasped the full horror. While many Germans were preoccupied with their own plight as a defeated nation, Jewish survivors desperately wanted the world to remember the atrocities, the sufferings, the Holocaust. One ghetto inhabitant famously said he only wanted to outlive the war just for half an hour, just to tell the world what happened. This incredible spirit to bear witness, preserve documents, is seen in countless diaries, notebooks, hidden archives, like the Warsaw Ghetto documents buried in milk cans.
Did the Nazis try to cover it up?
Yes. When the war seemed lost, the Nazi leadership desperately tried to erase their crimes. They distributed petrol to functionaries, ordering them to destroy all incriminating evidence in offices and camps. Yet despite these attempts, the history and memory of the Holocaust live on. In memoirs, fiction, documentaries, poetry, memorials, museums worldwide. These serve as a tribute to resistors, an embarrassing reminder to collaborators, and a chilling warning to those who watched in silence, urging humanity never to forget.
As we wrap up this deep dive, it's vital to consider how leaders outside Europe perceived Hitler. We have a unique insight through correspondence from a towering figure of nonviolence, Mahatma Gandhi.
Indeed, this offers a crucial, broader perspective. Mahatma Gandhi, leader of India's nonviolent independence movement, felt compelled to write to Hitler despite initial hesitation. Friends urged him for the sake of humanity. His first letter, July 23, 1939, began simply, "Dear friend." He told Hitler he was the one person in the world who can prevent a war which may reduce humanity to the savage state. He implored Hitler to consider the price of war, questioning if any objective was worth that cost. He invited Hitler to listen to someone who had successfully shunned war.
And the second letter,
Written over a year later, December 24, 1940. He reiterated his appeal, in the name of humanity, to stop the war, which was now raging. Gandhi emphasized the power of nonviolence, a force that can, without doubt, match itself against a combination of all the most violent forces in the world. He stressed a key principle. In nonviolent technique, there is no such thing as defeat. It is all do or die without killing or hurting. He highlighted its practicality, usable without money, and obviously without the aid of science of destruction. And in a profound warning, he cautioned Hitler that if Britain didn't learn nonviolence, some other power will certainly improve upon your method and beat you with your own weapon. He ended powerfully about Hitler's legacy. You are leaving no legacy, of which they would feel proud. They cannot take pride in a recital of cruel deed, however skillfully planned. Remarkable letters, pleas for peace amidst escalating conflict.
What remarkable, poignant letters. A fitting end to our deep dive into such a critical and frankly terrifying period. So to summarize our journey today, we explored the devastating impact of World War I, the fragility of the Weimar Republic that followed. We delved into the profound economic crises, hyperinflation, the Great Depression, which created such fertile ground for discontent. We tracked Hitler's meteoric rise, fueled by manipulative propaganda and national despair. We examined the systematic destruction of democracy, the establishment of total control, driven by that horrifying racial ideology leading to unimaginable suffering in the Holocaust. We also uncovered how the regime enforced social control, molding youth, defining women's roles through the cult of motherhood. And finally, we looked at the art of Nazi propaganda, the complex reactions of ordinary people, and those broader perspectives, like Gandhi's powerful appeals.
And, in an age of information or often misinformation, understanding how A charismatic leader could exploit fear, despair, national pride to dismantle democracy and perpetrate these unspeakable crimes. It's not just history. It's a profound lesson. For you, navigating a world full of complex narratives, it really underscores the vital importance of not just memorizing facts, but developing that ability to critically analyze narratives, question assumptions, discern truth from manipulative propaganda.
A truly thought-provoking question for us all. How can we ensure these lessons are never forgotten and are actively applied? Stay tuned for more exam-ready insights on the Deep Dive, where we unpack complex topics for your understanding and success. In this deep dive, we covered the following topics: the aftermath of World War I and the birth of the Weimar Republic, political radicalism and the economic crises of interwar Germany, Hitler's rise to power and the methods of his appeal, the destruction of democracy and the establishment of total control, the Nazi worldview and the establishment of the racial state, social control through youth indoctrination and the cult of motherhood, the art of Nazi propaganda and the varied reactions of ordinary people, and finally, the global perspectives on Nazism, including Mahatma Gandhi's letters to Hitler.